I know there's an excellent review inside this video. I'd like to see it soon. Let's talk about presents.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. So, today we'll be reviewing the neon movie Presents. Before we get into that, we are going to do what we always do and give you guys movie recommendations. So, Amanda, what's the most recent thing you've seen that you want to tell the people?
I don't have too much new this week. I mean, if you kind of seen previous reviews that we've done, I've talked about Traitors before, and it was the final. Again, just kind of exciting, sort of like the gameplay and the like maneuvering and sort of the setting people up for failure and stuff like that in the show. It's just great to watch. But outside of that, I was actually rewatching a bit of Special Ops Lionesses season 1. And I forgot how like gripping that show is and how like intense it is. And just again, sort of for anyone that hasn't seen it before, it's about this agent that has to be placed or is like kind of like infiltrating the sort of daughter of a target that they're trying to kill, and she has to like befriend her essentially. So she's like, kind of undercover and whatever. And it's just thrilling throughout in terms of sort of how she's like having to build a relationship, how she's trying to sort of kind of maintain her cover and things like that. And I need to properly sit down and watch season 2, because when I first tried to watch it, I was like a little bit distracted on my phone, this, that, and the other. But yeah, just having rewatched part of season 1, I'm like, okay, I'm ready for season 2 and seeing where it goes.
I watched two good things actually over the weekend. I watched Shaft and Beverly Hills Cop. I think it's called X or F. They've created so many Beverly Hills movies. I don't know if this is the 4th or 5th one or even 6th. I'm not too sure. But yeah, those two movies were really, really good. I remember when they came out, I was not like, I think one came out in 2024, and I think Shaft, I don't know when that one came out. It must have been 2024. And when it first came out, the trailer didn't really look too great to me. I was like, it is what it is. Like, I've seen the first Shaft, and I've seen a few Beverly Hills movies, I think 1 or 2. So they were good movies, but this one I was surprised that I actually enjoyed it. It did still, okay, for people who don't know what the movies are about, Beverly Hills is pretty much Eddie Murphy is a police officer. In this one, he goes all the way to Los Angeles to pretty much protect his daughter and investigate what the hell's going on, because she's taking on the case of, I think he's mixed, I think he's Hispanic, but she's taking on the case of a Hispanic kid who is pretty much being set up for murdering a police officer. So yeah, they're going through a whole journey there. And Shaft he's like an investigator where he works with the police, I believe. I think so. Something like that. I'm not too sure, but he's like in some sort of like in the police force area, and he helps his son try and figure out what happened to his best friend. Both of them are great. Shaft was funny as hell. I was surprised how funny it was gonna be, because I think the first Shaft was like that was really funny too, but this one I say is probably on the same wavelength. And Shaft came out, I think it was the 90s. So I'm surprised. Like I wasn't looking forward to these ones because I was so disappointed about Coming to America 2, right? Coming to America 2, because just everything, like the whole identity of Coming to America was just destroyed in Coming to America 2. So I thought with Beverly Hills Cop and Shaft, like it was going to be a thing where they try and just blend it in with the new generation and try and make it appeal to them. But I think they definitely kept the identity of both Beverly Hills and Shaft in these movies. So it was a good one.
Best thing I watched this week is Phone Booth, which is a 2002 psychological thriller movie. And it's essentially about this guy. He's this New York publicist who is shown to essentially use people for his own benefit in every aspect of his life. And then when he picks up a ringing phone in a phone booth, it turns out that he has been watched by this psychopath who wants to make an example of him by essentially saying, if you hang up the phone, he will start killing people. And so he starts playing these mind games with the guy, and it keeps escalating. Like somebody ends up dying, and then the police shows up and they think the publicist is the killer, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. And it's this mind game between the cop, the publicist, and the killer, who we only hear on the phone. And like the plot itself isn't really the important part about this movie. I think it's kind of a showcase for all you need for a great movie is a couple of good actors and a good script. Put them in a location and then just watch them go. This movie does suspense like nothing else. Within the first couple of minutes, it's got your attention, and it doesn't let go until the end. And like the actual plot and resolution is almost not important. It's just all these different performances and this whole thing about reputation and perception and people trying to use each other for various purposes. It just all kind of comes together in this very small and very suspenseful drama. Like we talked about Carry On a few weeks ago, and that very clearly took some notes from Phone Booth, but not enough. That does this particular thing probably better than anything else I've seen. So it's that one was really kind of a wake-up call, where if you watch this many movies and most of them are bad, eventually you stop believing that movies can do this. And then every once in a while one comes along that actually just reminds me why like movies are my favorite storytelling medium, because this can only be done in film, I think.
Definitely one I need to rewatch, Phone Booth. I've seen it quite a long time ago, but yeah, I remember it being really, really good and really like suspenseful and intense.
It's all the performances of like 3 actors. Right? Like it's not a huge thing.
It's Colin Farrell, right? Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell is the publicist. Forrest Whitaker is the cop. I think Kiefer Sutherland is the killer. That's basically the 3. And then like there's other characters too, but those are the 3 that drive the story, and they're all firing on all cylinders. I'm sure lots of people know this one, but I think it's just worth reminding. Like if you've kind of maybe lost sight a little bit of how good, well, like a thriller with a tight script can be, just rewatch this one.
Also, Colin Farrell, very, very underrated actor, man. Like doesn't get talked about enough about how really good he is as an actor.
Daniel, can you please let the people know what Presence is about?
All right, just so brief synopsis. It's kind of tricky to summarize because the trailer kind of sells it as like a ghost story or a haunted house story or a horror movie. And a lot of people have been really upset with this movie because the trailer created the wrong expectations. And what this actually is, it's a family drama in which one of the characters is a ghost. So essentially, a family moves into a house, and we just essentially see them going through like just their daily lives. Like the kids go to school, the parents have their work, they've got the family problems, all of that. The entire time they're being watched by a presence in the house. So the entire thing is shot from the perspective of the presence, and it just keeps watching this family, and we kind of observe them when they think nobody's watching. And from there, we kind of see kind of a cross-section of their daily lives, and we see their problems, and we see how these problems kind of culminate over the course of the plot. You just need to go into that movie with that knowledge, and with the knowledge that the trailer has been selling a different kind of movie. I hear a lot about walkouts, and in my movie, like 80% of the people who bought a ticket did not show up. So I think a lot of people are not taking this well, and I think we're gonna go into that in our spoiler discussion. But this is just one of those movies where what you've been sold is not really what you get, but what you get is still worth taking on its own merit, I think. So what were our takeaways from Presence?
It definitely wasn't bad. I'm trying to like summarize this.
It's hard to talk about without actually talking about the ending, right?
Yeah. Like you mentioned, it's like a family drama. Whilst there were sort of some interesting parts of the family drama, and there was like sort of some good moments in it, I don't think it was interesting enough as a whole to kind of like really sort of carry the movie, or like really make me hold this movie to sort of high esteem. And I kind of understand what the movie was trying to sort of get at and trying to sort of do with the whole sort of presence observing this sort of family drama, and then of course sort of what the presence ends up being at the end. But for me, it never really was super compelling, and it never really felt like it was anything more than just kind of being, I don't want to say generic, because like it wasn't like super generic, but it wasn't amazed or like wild, or like, you know, I wasn't given like a whole like sort of kind of like brand new perspective, or like kind of like fresh take, or like idea on like any type of like family drama. It just kind of felt manufactured a little bit, to be honest. To me, it's a hard one to summarize this one, because like again, like while I'm saying all of that, it wasn't like a bad watch. I wasn't like sat there like hating my experience of the movie, and I feel like the whole like, you know, it shooting it from the presence perspective, I thought was like pretty cool as well. There was like a lot of like cool shots, like you mentioned about like the feeling of like thinking that you're alone, but actually, you know, from our perspective or from the present perspective, it's just like seeing you in those like most vulnerable moments in there, which whereas like some of the like higher parts of the movie where some of the movie was at its best, especially like, you know, most things to do with the father. Actually, he was sort of my MVP, my favorite character in this, just the way that he was trying to like manage the family dynamics, trying to sort of, you know, kind of keep the family unit sort of, you know, together. It's cool. It's not one that you really need to the cinema to watch. It's probably like a one that if you caught on Netflix or like caught on streaming, you probably wouldn't mind watching, but you know, to kind of like fork out some money to go to the cinema and like kind of go out your way to see it, I wouldn't really recommend it for that, to be honest.
While watching this film, you can see that suspense is like the main thing that is like the vehicle of the movie, like something which is relied on and something which is pretty much that was their intention, right? It amounted to something which wasn't enough, and that's something which is very like it's something which can like ruin a cinema goer's experience, as in like, because like if your film is like, if the vehicle of the movie is suspense, right? So if that's the selling point of the film, and then the revelation is something which kind of feels like it amounted to nothing, that's what for me ruins the experience. And I've kind of felt the same with this movie. I would definitely, it's not a bad film, but it's not a good one. It had moments, and I felt like it was pretty cool, like the concept of the POV of the ghost, like, well, kind of like when there's a film about like a haunted mansion or there's like a ghost in a house or something like that, we always see from the perspective of the actual people rather than the ghost itself. So kind of like seeing it from the ghost's vision is like the first 20 minutes. I actually liked it, especially when the brother's friend was introduced, because obviously the whole, you know, relationship dynamics between him and the sister. I'm not gonna really say too much because we're not in spoiler section yet, but that storyline there was interesting. But then after the 20 minutes, it just kind of like there wasn't really much going on. It's just a film that is like a drama film that relies on suspense. Overall, I think I was left unsatisfied. Number one, because this wasn't what was being sold to me, because I thought I was gonna get a horror. And number two, there had to be like it was very linear. It just wasn't enough, man. It was like you knew what was gonna happen, if that makes sense. The only part where I was surprised was the end.
So I think this is a really solidly made movie, but I was kind of going back and forth between being bored out of my mind and captivated. And that often would be one like change every scene. So some things of this are really good. I think the whole idea of like a ghost movie that's shot in first person from the point of view of the ghost, and you are following somebody who has agency, but who cannot interact with anybody, and so is forced to watch, is something that on paper is really cool. And it sometimes realizes this. There are other scenes where it's just not as good as it could be. So there is some really heavy-handed foreshadowing, and there's some really clunky dialogue. And the teenagers were clearly written by somebody who has not been a teenager this century, and things like that, right? I think there's not a lot foreshadowing going on that actually in the movie really gives context to a lot of things. And we can go into that in the spoiler section too, what I'm talking about. But my point is, it feels like an underdeveloped concept where there are entire plot lines that seemingly don't really connect to the rest. Overall, I had a good time watching it, but there were extended periods where I thought, like, this is just not interesting. Can we go back to like 2 scenes ago where I was really captivated by this one performance or this one scene or something like that? So it is a really mixed bag. So for that reason, I'm not entirely enthusiastic about it, but I also don't think it's trash. I think it's a very flawed, interesting idea that is at least fine, if not good. So that's my glowing review. Let's talk about it.
It's hard to actually talk about it, even though we need to talk about it, because I feel like the vision for this film was to have a lasting impression on the audience because of the way that was made and like the perspective that was being told from. Firstly, was it giving that for you? Number one. And number two, how original did you feel like the story was? Did it felt fresh and unique, or it borrowed from other ghost films that we've seen before?
So it definitely references other ghost movies, right? So the poltergeist activity, this whole idea that the ghost is driven by instincts from their life, but they're not the full person anymore. Things like these are all familiar ghost things, right? And I think once we reveal that the ghost is actually the brother who caused his own death and then traveled back in time and kind of formed as like a stable time loop where he causes himself, it's actually a pretty involved science fiction idea. And there's time travel involved, and the time travel happened because of a thing that happened in the past, and the thing happened in the past because there was time travel and stuff like that. One of my big problems with this movie is that is really where it gets interesting, but that's the last minute of the movie, and then it's over. So I have read a lot of like short stories, like science fiction and horror specifically, that are very mundane for almost all of it. And then the last paragraph, the punchline happens, but then it's over, and that idea is not explored. And I think this movie would have been so much better if we've gotten the reveal at the 50% mark, where we find out who the ghost is at exactly 50%. And then the second half of the movie explores that and builds on that. And now the rules have changed now that the ghost knows who he is and maybe tries to prevent it from happening in the first place, or knows that this has to happen, otherwise he won't happen, and so on. There's lots of different possibilities, but I think just the fact that there's an implied mystery of who the ghost is, right? Because it's got to be somebody who lived in that house and who suffered a tragic death, but there's no record of anything like that happening. And so, I don't know, it's like, does nobody know about this, or does the realtor lie for some reason? Or is there something else going on, right? And then we get very heavy-handed exposition from the psychic who just explains how it works in one scene. And then in the last minute, we figure out that it's the brother. And it all happens in the last minute and kind of makes sense. But then it's over and we don't get to interact with it. We don't build on it or anything like that. I think that is kind of where it really gets frustrating.
If we'd gotten that context at the 50% mark, it would have contributed a little bit more to sort of the family drama that was going on, because now we understand it's the brother that maybe like regretful of his past, or like maybe hasn't been the best brother or like to his sister, and trying to like take steps to even like shape himself and like change himself to like try and sort of be better for his sister, and like try and be there for his sister without having that reveal and without like knowing what the ghost is. You're like experiencing this family drama, and it just feels like, for me, it just felt hollow, because it felt forced that the brother and the sister, just doesn't get along, and he's not empathetic to her situation, even though she's had two friends that have died. And, you'd think that someone with like a little bit of heart would be a little bit more mindful of that. And then you've got like this mother who just like is completely absent, doesn't care at all. And it just like, it would have helped with maybe the messaging of the movie if we'd gotten that reveal a little bit sooner.
Yeah, this really lives and dies with the family drama, right? Like, can you get on board with the slice of life? And I don't like slice of life in general. I like there to be some kind of structure and direction to it. And that is just pretty much missing here, right? There are entire subplots that don't really connect to the main story in a way, right? And they kind of round out who these characters are and what kind of family they are, and how the image they portray to the outside is not quite what their family life is really like. And like, none of it is exactly pointless, but as I was watching it, I kept looking for the connections. How does the parents almost getting divorced tie into anything else? How does the mother being involved in some kind of white collar crime tie into anything else? How important is it that the boyfriend starts out as the brother's friend when the brother and sister don't get along? Like, there are all these different pieces, and it's not like none of them connect, but a lot of them don't, specifically the mom's white collar crime. And we spend a whole bunch of time on that, and on the father kind of toying with the idea of divorce and then throwing it away and trying to stick it out and all of that. It feels like if you've done another pass or two over the script, you could have connected these things a little bit, where one informs the other or leads into the other or contextualizes the other. And I think if you really dig into it, you can find something. But throughout a lot of the movie, I was left wondering, like, what's the point of this? And then I'm not sure, like, by the end of it, I still didn't know. I still didn't know why the mom being so career-focused and so success-focused really tied into much of anything else, and how that connected to the daughter, other than she ignores the daughter. But then she ignoring the daughter doesn't seem to cause very much. It's not like she seeks out the boyfriend to get back at the mom. I didn't think. For like, you could imagine different ways, but very few of them happened. And that's kind of my really big criticism of this movie, is that it's not a very long movie, right? It's like 85 minutes, So that's something that I like, right? I think movies have been too long, they've been too bloated with too many subplots. And this is 85 minutes. It's basically one idea, kind of expanded into movie length. But even then, we have large pieces where it seems like you could just cut them.
That was part of my feeling towards the end of the movie. It was a bit like you kind of like felt a little bit empty, or you didn't feel like satisfied enough with kind of like what was going on with the mum and sort of like how that played into anything, and sort of the whole like dynamic between like the mother and the father, like you said, like none of it fed into sort of like the daughter, who was sort of the main person behind this. It just seemed like it was all just like a vehicle to kind of get to the last point where like the mother had to like rush off somewhere and the father like wanted to be like supportive and like followed her. So then that gives the boyfriend the opportunity to sort of exact his plan. But the only other aspect I kind of like see it tying to is like the theme of, you know, how you portray yourself sort of outside isn't sort of kind of like who you are behind the scenes when you're sort of kind of like by like when you're like alone at home or like in your kind of like family home or whatever. Outside of that, again, like I was the same. I was just like waiting for it to connect, waiting for it to click, waiting to even like understand what was even going on with that whole side plot. I feel like that's why I probably feel like the family drama just wasn't enough, because that's the crux of the movie, because nothing was feeding into each other. Like, you know, the whole mother not caring about her daughter just like didn't drive anything. It didn't feed anything. Like, she seemed to be, I wouldn't say she was like well-rounded, because obviously she had like her issues that she was like kind of like dealing with, and she had some trauma that she was like trying to unpack, but none of it was remotely related to the mother. And there was nothing about the son being the favorite child as well for a mother that like fed into anything really as well. So yeah, on that aspect, it was quite disappointing.
Let's unpack that a little bit, because it's easy to say, well, there's just nothing there, end of review, right? That's easy to say, right? So the mom earns the money, right? Like, I don't know if it's even said what the father does. I think he has a job, but it seems to be insignificant in terms of income, right? So she's the one who provides the lifestyle, right? And they live in this nice house. And actually, one of the things I was thinking the entire movie is, I want to live in this house. It looks really nice. Right? It's just a really nice house. But whatever job she has, she's very results driven and very the ends justify the means kind of thing. Like, she outright says this at one point: it doesn't really matter what mistakes you make as long as you do it for the people you love, right? Which is her rationalizing her activities. And it's not clear whether those were necessary for them to have this nice lifestyle, or if that was just greed. I don't think it's really made clear. But then this whole thing about achievement is the big thing. It kind of leads to her favoring the son, right? Because he's the popular one. He's the one who wins all the competitions. You can see him getting a nice scholarship, going to some big name university, right? He's like on this trajectory as a winner, right? And the daughter isn't, and therefore she focuses entirely on the son and ignores the daughter. But she also doesn't even really like push the son. She just wants to kind of be associated with his winning. Right, that's what it seems to be, and the father is the one who actually tries to do the parenting. And then whenever he points this out to her, she's got a very knee-jerk, very immature reaction to it, which basically means she knows what she's doing, and she's in denial about it because she can't do anything else. So there's a whole bunch of different stuff going on here, right? My question is, how does it connect to the rest of the actual story? Because to me, what's actually the core of the story is the relationship between the brother and the sister, and about how they can't get along, and they basically kind of make each other's lives difficult. At least he makes her life more difficult, right? But she's not exactly helping either. And then in the end, he dies protecting her, right? And he's completely selfish throughout his life, and then he dies doing the first selfless thing that he's ever done, right? And as a result, he basically is condemned to relive that as a ghost, reduced to his basic instinct, which is to protect his sister. So is that enough?
How I first viewed it as was, okay, the ghost is watching family dramas. So it's not a thing where it had to connect with the ghost itself.
No, but then they're like, there should be some type of cause and effect in terms of like the regrets of like how you treat someone, the regrets of like not being there for someone in this and the other. There has to be like some type of like cause and effect between things like what the mother's doing, or things like what the brother's doing, to how that impacts the daughter in this, who's essentially like kind of like the main person that the ghost is mainly interacting with. There had to be that connection. There had to be sort of that level of sort of things impacting one another, that then sort of leads to that moment where sort of the brother has that moment, or has that sort of heroic moment. Because even when, like Daniel was mentioned about the whole dynamic between the brother and the sister, I didn't really feel it. Like, I know there was like moments where he was a bit of a dick to her, like at the dinner table, where he kind of has enough about, like, I can't remember what he says. He's like kind of like sounds off on sort of her, and like sort of her experiencing like the ghost or something like that, or experiencing like a presence in the house. I can't remember exactly what it was.
They're basically saying, you as parents have to put up with this nonsense, but I don't. I'm out of here.
And that was like, to me, the most like kind of like profound part of like the whole like dynamic between the two. The rest of it was kind of just like typical sibling stuff, where at times, he might like just like kind of go and check on that. At times that like they don't get along or whatever like that. But there wasn't really much in there for me that I kind of like took away from sort of from their relationship, to have that moment in the end where he's the ghost and he's like having to be the one that really went to save her. So
there's like little pieces, right? So there's a scene where they're hanging out in the evening. The son tells the story about how he and a group of friends embarrassed this girl at school, and how that has kind of gotten out of hand, and now there's like nude pictures circulating the school and whatever.
That one, I was so baffled while watching it, because it seemed like the mother was like loving hearing about it, and the father was there in earshot, and then they're talking about a kid who's had like their news leaked, and she seemed like so into the story. I was like, okay, that's completely weird, and it didn't feel like that's how it would play out, but maybe I don't know. There's
something there, right? So the mom is established as not wanting to be a parent. She ignores the daughter, and she wants to be the son's friend, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there are multiple scenes where this is the case, where she acts like completely ignores any mistakes the son makes, and basically just wants to be like friends with him, right? Like there's this very creepy scene where she's drunk and she almost comes onto him, which was weird, but that was really just her rationalizing her thing about like committing these crimes in order to make give the family a better life, right? There was clearly this thing about she kind of idolizes the son, and she likes having a winner in the family, and she wants to be proud of him, and she probably brags about him to her friends, stuff like that. So she wants to enable kind of his winner behavior, right? Like when he's part of this high status group, and when he brings home this friend who, I don't know if she ever reacts to the friend, but just the fact that he's friends with popular kids is probably something that she approves of. So I think that there's something there in the psychology of the mom. Like, it seems like it should really inform how the brother and the sister interact, right? Where they get treated differently by their parents, or mostly the mom. Like, the father just tries to do damage control the entire movie, but the mom is the one who's just completely ignoring her and has basically written her off as. I remember, like, I think the dad recommends at some point that she should get a different therapist, and she just says, she just has to work it out, something like that, right? She's not involved. She's not trying to help. She just has written her off as damaged, and she wants to pay attention to the winner in the family, right?
Yeah.
I think these pieces are all there, and they kind of all make sense. What I'm just asking is, well, why do we spend so much time on these things that don't directly influence what the point of the story is? Just to stick to this one aspect, the son has essentially this borderline narcissistic behavior enabled by his mom, right? And the father is not. He's trying to do something about it, but he's clearly given up, and he's clearly not getting results despite his best efforts, right? But that does not seem to then carry over into how brother and sister really interact, right? They're distant, but it does not seem a reflection of that, right? The daughter just seems to have been largely checked out. She does not seem to have a grievance about like wanting and not getting the attention and approval of her mother and stuff like that. I don't know. It just seems too disparate. Like, it seems like there are essential pieces missing. And then when we get to the point of the almost divorce, that also, I don't think, really connects to the main story, right?
Was that an almost divorce?
So the father knows about the mother's criminal activity.
Yeah.
And he wants to know, like, he wants to protect himself, he wants to protect his family, and he's contemplating divorce, right? or at least legal separation or whatever the exact thing is, but basically so that he does not get dragged down with her and the family does not get dragged down with her when it eventually comes out. And he wants to know from his lawyer friend how liable exactly is he and what are his options and so on. But then in the end, he decides that he's going to stick it out. They then go onto this company retreat and where they try to talk to a guy who can help them.
I mean, the real question is, what does any of that really say about like family and like family dynamics and sort of know the inner workings of a family behind the scene? Like, they're just like kind of like you said, just like examples of like what could potentially happen and like sort of know how the psychology of like certain sort of parents' behaviors or siblings' behaviors or whatever. But there never really is a point to it, and because there isn't like the cause and effect, it's like, what's the movie really kind of like trying to say about any of it? So again, even on like a theme level, I'm not really getting too much from sort of the pieces in here. You're just like, okay, cool, they're in this situation, the mom has a favorite in the situation, the parents are in like a difficult like position, but it doesn't really like speak to anything like on the story level or on the theme level for me.
Is it good storytelling to have just a mystery that drags out for 99% of the movie and then becomes really obvious in the last minute? Is it actually a satisfying story? Because that's what this is, right? We have no idea who the ghost is, and we find out it's the brother in the last minute, and then the movie ends. And it's really obvious as it happens, right? There's no like big mystery to figure out at the end. But also, I don't think there are any real clues throughout the movie where you could figure it out halfway through. Is that satisfying to watch?
Like I remember you mentioned, like before, you mentioned how it takes skill to do comedy, right? It takes skill to do mystery as well. So if they're banking on like the big reveal, the mystery to be the selling point of the film, then there should be more layers added to the storyline, but there wasn't. And I think the reason why there wasn't was because they had the whole psychological and the whole thriller and the whole horror genres and aspects of things. And I think they thought that was going to be enough, but no, it wasn't. It dragged out. It just seemed like, as I said, it just seemed like a family reality TV show that I was watching with some. There wasn't really even jump scares, but just with some like.
Can't do a jump scare if you're from the point of view of the ghost.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can't really do a jump scare. You are right, but I thought there was going to be those at some points, but there wasn't. But yeah, so there was a lot going on in terms of the genres. I keep referring to the genres, but I think the genre is what messed up this film. Is if they just presented
but
it.
You know, from like 5 to 10 minutes in, this is not a horror movie, right? This is something else. This is a ghost watching a family. And then we observe the inner workings of their family. That includes watching like this terrible thing that's happening to the daughter. Like that's the point, right? I don't think I didn't feel misled by the movie.
You didn't feel misled by the film?
No, like obviously the trailer is selling and the posters are selling something else. Like the poster quotes, like you do all the same thing. Like every movie poster says that this is the scariest movie of the year and whatever nonsense. And that's just to sell tickets. But once you're in the movie, I think it's pretty upfront about what it is. I didn't feel misled. I didn't feel strung along. Like from the first couple of minutes into the movie, I realized, okay, this is what we're doing. It's okay. Like I don't need a standard horror movie. In fact, if it's not a standard horror movie, that's actually more interesting. And then I kept waiting for it to really develop that idea, and it didn't really that much. But as I was watching the movie, I felt like I was on the same page with the movie the entire time.
To me as well, like just kind of like bring it back to like the whole like mystery aspect of it. At a certain point, you're like, okay, this ghost is clearly here to like look out for the girl in this. There's like some type of like connection between the two, because like the first time she even walks into the house, she kind of senses a ghost. And at no point throughout the movie did it make me question that it was like possibly like someone like the brother or anything like that. To me, throughout the whole movie, my whole mindset was it's just someone looking out for her. It could be like one of the girls that was like killed or something like that. Like I know the movie like kept like trying to push that idea, but it didn't give enough clues or enough like ideas that it could potentially be something other than just like one of the girls looking out for her, to be honest. And that's kind of like why when we got to the reveal of like it being the brother at the end, and it was just to be like, oh, like we could have probably done something a little bit more interesting with this, or like it could have gone in a little bit more of a interesting direction, or you could have like maybe had me like kind of guessing or like glued to the mystery of who this person was, because like once I'd like figured out, okay, this ghost is just like here to like help them, you kind of forget the mystery of like who the like ghost is. Of course, you like know that you're probably going to get the final reveal at the end. And to be honest, if it turned out to be one of the girls that was murdered by the boyfriend, I think that might have even been a little bit more disappointing than something it being the brother, just because it would have been like, okay.
I absolutely like the reveal. It's more like the gold standard for twists or subverted expectations is Game of Thrones, right? The Red Wedding specifically, where when it happens, it's shocking. In the first time you see that scene happen, but then if you watch it again, you find all sorts of clues, and you see pieces being moved into position, and you see motivations being established, and you see different threads converging on this one event. And when it actually happens, it feels obligatory almost. It feels inevitable. In my mind, this is how you do it, right? This is how you do this big reveal, kind of that's shocking in the moment, but that makes sense in hindsight. It's always dangerous to say it has to be like this one thing, but there's a reason why that scene had such a big impact on everybody, right? When it happened in the show, which is that it's not simply a surprise. It actually, you watch it again, it actually makes sense, and it's really satisfying to kind of see the clues, and that's, I think, what I'm missing from this movie. This movie really should have been, the core of it should have been the brother kind of growing up at just the right moment and kind of beginning to care about other people, right? And there are a couple of lines in the movie that basically point towards this, but it's not like an organic growth in the character, right? He falls asleep as a complete asshole, and he wakes up as the protector. And it seems like there's no real in between, right? Like, you can say that, okay, this is the first time his sister has been in real danger, and therefore all the nonsense and sibling rivalries and puberty nonsense falls away, and now when it really matters, he cares, right? That's a fine thing, but it happens very quickly, and goes from 0 to 100. I don't feel like there's a progression here where you can see, like the father tells him at one point, there's a good man in you, and I hope I meet him one day, right? I didn't feel like there was a good person inside him. He was just a little shit, and maybe he grows up to be somebody else, but I don't think he's like a good person who's just had a bad influence. The more I think about it, like maybe he starts out as kind of a nice kid, and then he meets Tyler. Is it Tyler? And Tyler turns him into an asshole. And the parents say, "What happened to you? I don't recognize you." But that happens to people when they're teenagers, right? Sometimes. And then eventually they grow up. And maybe that's what people think is happening. And then he has to kind of rediscover his kind of connection with his sister when the chips are down, when it really matters, right? Something like that, right? Like I think that is really missing. And I think if we had cut out the stuff, all the divorce stuff and everything, that I think it's not completely pointless. It still fills in some blanks in terms of who these people are, but it does not support this core arc that really the brother has, right? Because of that, we don't have time for it, and because of that, it doesn't happen, and because of that, it feels sudden and unsatisfying, I think. That's kind of my final diagnosis, that is really what the movie hinges on, and we don't do it. Am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I think you kind of like hit the nail on the head with that one, in terms of like it being a little bit undeserving and sort of not having that logical sort of progression from the brother. With a lot that happened in this movie, even like the whole like boyfriend situation and him sort of kind of being the killer in this. I don't know. I felt it was obvious that there was like something off with his character. There was the moment where they were kind of like in bed. I think it was like one of the first or second times that they were in bed together, and like they're like having a conversation, and then they kind of like
gives this big speech about consent, because that's why I realized, oh, clearly he's a bad guy.
No, mine was when he was like kind of like pressing about like wanting to know about the girls that had been murdered. To me, it was a bit like, that's like a very odd line of questioning, or odd like kind of like thing to kind of like probe on that he was doing. And from that moment, I was like, okay, like there's clearly something off with this particular character in this movie. You then just kind of like see him kind of go for the juggler and trying to like spike a drink, and it doesn't work the first time because like the girls can interfere the first time, but isn't able to interfere the second time for whatever reason. But it just didn't.
I think because he's holding the glass.
Was it?
I think the first time he puts it on the table and he's able to vibrate the table. Second time, I think he never lets go of the glass. I think that's it.
Yeah. I think that may be it. But even with like that, it just for me it didn't feel like there was like much of a mystery there, because like again it felt like they just made it, to me anyways, a little bit obvious that there was like something very like off with his character and off with who he was as a person. You just feel like if they'd like reworked the script, and if they like kind of like reworked what they've done here, is they would have just had a little bit kind of like just like better progression in terms of like how things were unfolding into for some of the main parts of the story of the sister being in danger and the brother having to come of age, like become the man that he should be to save her. Maybe even like at first like maybe like missing or like misunderstanding like his friend's intention with his sister, or like kind of being blind to like certain things that's happening between like the boyfriend and sister, and then starting to wise up to it, and then he has like the heroic moment, because it seems like the brother introduces the boyfriend to his sister, and then you kind of never see an interaction too much of like the three of them together again. And I feel like the movie could have done a little bit better with having more of that, and having more of like the threat being there, and like maybe like his obsession with bringing friends with a popular kid, or like him kind of like being this bit of an asshole, like being oblivious to kind of what's going on between the boyfriend and the sister.
But I don't necessarily think, for me, I actually think that was enough in terms of the interaction between the brother and sister and the brother's friend. The reason why, not even the reason why, but I think because obviously when their first interaction, I actually thought that was like the juiciest parts of the movie, like the parts that kept me like engaged. Like I was waiting for the brother to come back, the brother's friend to come back, because obviously that's like when it comes to like that kind of like topic of messing with your boy's sister, that's always gonna like keep you engaged, because that's something that you just shouldn't do. But like even like when they first met, the look they kind of like gave each other, there was like a moment of silence. The look they kind of gave each other, and then when he went to the brother's room and he said, "Oi, like, can I?" I think kind of said implied like something he wanted to do, like kind of like
Doesn't Chloe even overhear that, and isn't she weirded out by it? Or is
I
the
don't
ghost?
know. I don't think she heard it. I'm not sure if she heard it, but the kind of like brother was like nah, and that's when that's that in that moment there is when you saw like the brother in protective mode, because and like I necessarily didn't even have a huge issue with kind of like the relationship between the brother and the sister and how it was portrayed, because sometimes I feel like that kind of like is realistic to how it is in a household between brother and sister, because a lot of the times you're at each other's necks, but when but when it actually matters for you to actually be there for your sister, or to be there for your sibling, it will just come out. Do you get what I'm saying? So like him going from 0 to 100 when he was flat out, like before, prior, like when he was not even unconscious, when he was sleeping on the couch, before that he was an arsehole to his sister.
Specifically, he wasn't just sleeping, he was drugged.
Yeah, he was drugged. But yeah, before that he was being the arsehole to his sister. Then afterwards, all of a sudden he becomes like the protector. For me, that was realistic, because like even though let's say I have an argument with my sister, if I see her like 2 minutes later getting a text or something, I'm just gonna jump up. Do you get what I'm saying? So for me, that was realistic. But yeah, in terms of like the brother and his friend and the sister, like they had their interactions, for me was enough, because it's like they had that like awkward type of moment where I was like, oh, okay, that gave me like in that moment I had a feeling like, oh, okay, something's gonna happen. Like it was enough for me to know what was gonna happen next, and it did happen next. So then when they actually did meet each other the next day, their second encounter, when he came over, when the brother wasn't there, and they had their little, like for me it felt enough. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't think they kind of like dragged it down our throats.
No, it's for me, like for me, it's like what I felt was missing, or what I kind of would have maybe enjoyed a little bit more, was the whole. Maybe we know that the boyfriend is a threat to Chloe, the sister, and it's that that us wanting him to us wanting the brother to come of age, to kind of like overcome like this mindset that he's in, or this like kind of like character that he's being at the moment, to eventually be the one to like step up and protect his sister, and like be like like we were talking about with the Airplane movie, where he needed to overcome the anxiety. Like we needed the brother to overcome like whatever he was going through to eventually be there for his sister. And we needed to kind of, for me anyways, have him be there and not being able to like detect the threat that or like the danger that his sister's in, because of who he was, because of like his character, because of like what he was in that particular moment. Like everything else was fine. Like the whole like them meeting for the first time, and like the boyfriend being a little bit sneaky behind the brother's back. It's all fine, but I don't know. For me, it just would have been interesting to just kind of like see the brother in that moment and give us a look like something to kind of like root for him a little bit, to like take his like blind glasses off and sort of see actually what's going on and sort of be there for his sister.
I think what it comes down to for me is that all of this is realistic. Like, people behave in believable ways, like the decisions they make broadly, given what we know about their personalities and where they are. On balance, it all makes sense, right? The divorce, the father contemplating divorce, but then deciding against it, the mom taking all these risks so that her family can have a nice life, her favoring the winner and not the broken child, and the daughter kind of retreating from all of that and maybe seeking somebody who finally gets her and stuff like that, right? All of that is realistic, but stories are not just about what's realistic, right? It's all about it's about flow and character development and character arcs and all of these things. And I think that is kind of what's missing. And a lot of the praise for this movie is how true to life all of this is, as in each individual step could happen. But that's kind of what it is, individual events in the lives of a family that kind of stumble towards an event. And that is not the same as a story, right? A story needs an amount of structure and direction and resonance and stuff like that. And I think that is what's missing. That it feels unsatisfying to me because I don't feel like either Chloe is on some tragic trajectory because she's been failed by her parents, and therefore she makes bad choices and therefore she almost gets killed, or she trusts in the wrong people, or Tyler just enjoying kind of the limelight and being popular and having all these successes and all this attention. And then Ryan kind of apparently coming from a family that is very stifling. And so he exerts power over anybody he can. And that basically means seeking out broken people and manipulating them and getting their trust, and then kind of exercising the ultimate power over them by killing them, right? When they least suspect. Like, each individual part of this makes sense. And each individual part of this is kind of interesting. But I think what it all comes down to is it does not add up to that much of a story, right? Like, if you try to make this into a coherent story, you would cut a whole bunch of extraneous stuff and you would put more flesh on the bones, right? You would add more foreshadowing, you would establish more things more clearly, but also in a relevant way, right? And I think that is really where this movie, I think, falls short, and that's why, at least for me, I think it seems for all of us felt unsatisfying, right? And that kind of leads into another issue I have with this movie. So a lot of people are really praising this, right? Online specifically. And one of the things they praise is the foreshadowing, where there are individual lines that sound ominous or seemingly foreshadow things that happen later on. So one example is, at one point, the father says to Tyler, "It wouldn't kill you to stand up for your sister." Guess what? He stands up for his sister and it kills him, right? Is it good writing? It's clearly put in there so that the audience can recognize it as a clue. Mm-hmm. But it's not character driven. It's not something that has meaning based on the father saying it to the son in that situation and that then having bearing on what happens later on, right? It's purely the writer playing games with the audience. Like, look how clever I am and look how clever you are for having noticed it.
No, but wouldn't you argue that line there triggered a turning point?
What's the turning point?
No. The turning point is
he hears his sister crying for help. Or no, not exactly. He wakes up and the ghost kind of just tells him there's danger. And then he realizes, oh no, Ryan is gone and I don't see where Chloe is. And he puts two and two together. He does not actually make a decision. He just springs into action.
I understand that. It doesn't matter how generic it was, though. But I'm just saying that it's still a turning point. Because prior to his dad saying that, he was an asshole.
It's not, like, the dad also says to him, "There's a good man in you. I hope to meet him one day." Which, as a parenting line, pretty strong. Like, I've banked that in case I ever have a child that needs to be told something, right? I'm gonna quote that one day, because that's, like, as far as guilt trips go, that's one of the most elegant ones I've ever seen. But that does not have I don't think that has an impact on Tyler. I don't think he has a soul searching moment after this and decides, okay, I'm gonna do the right thing from now on. Right?
No, but he does have but he does have like there's a moment of reflection when afterwards he goes to his dad in the living room and he says, "Okay, I agree. I was acting like an arsehole. And then Dad said, did you tell that to your sister? He said,
Sure.
yes. She told me, yes. So it is like that.
But that is not part of an arc. That is not why he does the right thing in the end. Or that's not why he sacrifices himself in the end. It's again an isolated incident, and that isolated incident makes sense by itself, but it does not slot into a bigger arc, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and I think that is just one of those examples. Or like there's other things too, like everything the medium says is just there. Like it's the most obvious exposition ever, right? Everything she says is just tailor-made to leave a clue for the audience, so that later on you can say it all made sense. It's not really organic why she would say those specific things in that specific moment, and that then has an impact on other people in the story. It's just the writer feeding pieces to the audience again. And it drives me crazy how many people think this is good writing. Like, honestly, I think this is actually really bad writing. Like, you should hide this in the actual story and in actual character actions. You shouldn't just tell the audience what the deal is.
I'm curious, how would, because I agree with you, this is completely bad writing, and it's just like feeding the information in there without like doing it in a clever way. But you kind of normally have like good ideas behind it. But how would you have fed the whole he's lost in time thing into the story?
You want me to rewrite the movie?
Normally
I do this without your enthusiasm, so that's why I want to just emphasize.
Yeah, go on. Of course.
Okay, so I would have put a lot of emphasis on the ghost's reactions, because the deal with the ghost is he is Tyler, but he doesn't remember it. He has this instinctive need to focus on the sister, and he has this imperative in his mind. This like the only thing that's left is like the imperative protect Chloe. That's what he does throughout the entire movie, and he doesn't know why. So what I would have done is to have to put more emphasis and more detail into the ghost's reactions, like what he pays attention to and why, and how he reacts to things. For example, when he hears the father talk to his lawyer about divorce, any 16-year-old who hears their parents talk about divorce freaks out. The ghost had no reaction. The ghost should have had a reaction, a panic reaction, and not understood why. Because he doesn't remember that this is his father. He just knows this is bad. I don't want this to happen, but I don't know why. That should have been the case. Or when he meets Ryan for the first time, he should have hated Ryan and not known why, for example. And throughout the movie, there should have been, like, if I was rewriting this as a complete amateur, I break into the director's home and I steal the script and I take out the red marker. I would see, okay, what is Tyler's mind? Like, what is on Tyler's mind in the last moment before he dies as he falls out of the window? Protect Chloe, beat the crap out of Ryan. I'm sorry for everything I've done in the past year, right? That's kind of what's on his mind. And that drives every action the ghost has up until this point. And he even behaves in erratic ways that make no sense to the audience until you know the context. That is how you make that sing. In my opinion.
So, I mean, I would say,
somebody give me $2 million and I'll make this movie.
we might have to start making it a regular section where Daniel rewrites bad movies.
We've got a playlist on the channel. There's like 5 videos in it already.
Yeah. Oh, do we actually?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay, great. So
I've done this before. No, but like I think actually like this is the thing that should have made the movie special. Like if the puzzle is who is the ghost, and you get more and more pieces, and over the course of the movie they kind of slot together, and then once you have the full context, now you know why everything happens the way it does. And I think that's what's missing, because this whole slice of life approach, I don't think is better.
And you can actually kind of see as well, like what you were saying, and I was just like thinking about the moment of like how if you had this ghost that was like acting out to sort of things that Tyler logically would, like the father sort of kind of like talking about divorce and whatever, you know, that could then influence the actual people's behaviors in the movie as well. Like, for example, like if the father's like thinking about leaving the family behind and like sort of, or leaving, because normally like the kids stay with sort of the mother and child, and like most likely she'll get the house or whatever like that. But if he feels like there's an active like possible threat in the house because of like, you know, when he's talking about divorce and like there's like house is shaking up or whatever like that, things falling down, it makes you want to be a little bit more of a protector. You want to like stay and you want to like sort of, you know, protect your family from sort of, from what's going on. So it would have been interesting as well if there was like the ghost's reaction is like, again, like feeding into sort of know how people behave, or like how people like sort of know interact and stuff like that. So that's just one example.
Which kind of makes it a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because the ghost is caused by what will happen in the future, and what happens in the future is shaped by what he does as a ghost.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
you're in this
cool
endless
stuff
time
on paper.
Hey, someone pay Daniel, man. Someone pay Daniel. We might have to start a petition.
Whoa, guys, last ones.
I think cool pieces in there, which is probably why I don't hate the movie, or why I don't dislike the movie. Definitely just doesn't connect well, doesn't gel well. There is like some emotion in there. I know we didn't speak too much about sort of the father in this, because we were kind of like more talking about like certain topics as opposed to sort of, I think things we like. But the father in this was quite good to see, just in terms of like how he was trying to like be a little bit more emotionally intelligent, trying to sort of be conscious of like other people's like feelings, and trying to like kind of like tailor his approach, and like sort of the case of his approach to sort of the different people in his family, and sort of the different way that they needed to hear from him in this. So I think there was like definitely like some really all elements related to the family in this, but it just didn't accumulate to anything satisfying, anything sort of fulfilling. And all of the reveals, like when you're doing a mystery, the reveal has to be sort of oh, I can't believe like it's that, or like it's got to be like jaw dropping. It doesn't have to be jaw dropping, but it has to like grab you. And I don't think there was enough in the film anyway. I don't think there was enough in the film to make any type of reveal satisfying, to be honest. Basically, a cool movie that just didn't connect well. Worth watching maybe on streaming, but can't give it much more praise than that, to be unfortunately. Just again, like one more time, just like the fact that it was like shot from the ghost perspective, and we were like seeing it from from them, and it almost felt like being like a fly on the wall, and like seeing people in like their most like kind of like weakest and vulnerable moments. It was like a cool idea. It was like a cool twist on doing your typical sort of ghost movie. So I'll give the movie praise for that as well. But again, just ultimately like not satisfying enough for me to give it too much of a thumbs up. So I'll give it 5 out of 10.
For me, I had a linear experience with this one. It did have like some engaging moments, mainly with the introduction mainly like the whole relationship dynamic between the sister and the brother's friend, and obviously the suspense that kind of created, and the suspense that created. However, like I said, it was a linear experience. I think is what you see is what you get. It's just not weighty enough to be a psychological thriller. More should have definitely be added to this. I'm gonna give this one a 5.5. It's not average, but it's not good. It's borderline good because it's not a terrible movie. Like I've seen like films way like worse than this. So this one, it was done correctly, but it's like pretty much I think like Daniel mentioned before, like a C-. Literally, it's like you just passed when it comes to like a grade criteria for what makes a good movie. I'll say you just passed, but like you're just touching C. So
I think this is a C+ audience or a cinema score, which checks out. Like I can see audiences not liking this.
I see. Yeah, but yeah, for me, 5.5.
Yeah, so I like pretty much all of the pieces. I like the premise, like the gimmick, like the Mickey doing a ghost story from but notably we did not go into this, but ghost stories have stopped being monster stories at some point in the last 20 years. It used to be that the ghost was the monster, and now the ghost is the victim. That's almost always the case. It's very rare for a ghost to actually be a danger. It's almost always a victim who needs to be helped in some way. So we didn't really go into that, but that kind of informs how this story works as well, I think. So I like the conceit of doing a ghost story in the first person from the point of view of the ghost. I am very strict on endings, and this is one of the best ones I've seen in years, just from is this good? Is this a good ending to the story? And I think it is. It just doesn't connect the pieces, and it spends too much time on stuff that does not feed into the core of what this movie is about. And for that reason, I can't call it great. And I can't even say I had a good experience watching it, because I was so frustrated for long pieces of it. But I can recognize like the quality of it in pretty much all the individual pieces. I just wish they'd connected those pieces better in the final script. So, and for that reason, that's a 5 out of 8 for me. Not bad by any means, but very, very far short of what it could have been.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning into today's episode. Hervé, please do your little plug-in.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts down below in the comment section. What did you think about the movie? Did you like the twist of the brother being the ghost in this? What did you think about the family drama and sort of what I had to say about like family life behind the scenes and stuff like that? Let us know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And of course, if you liked what we discussed today, tell a friend. And if you hated and think we were just talking absolute crap, tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast.
All right, guys. You heard it first. We'll catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.